I secretly poured high-proof vodka into my orange juice. After making sure no one was watching, I added an entire bottle. I tossed away the empty bottle, then drank the special cocktail in one gulp. The chief flight attendant was already used to the smell of alcohol. Only the new first officer stared in shock. By then, I had already taken my seat in the cockpit, and before long, I fell asleep. Judging by the flight attendant's calm reaction, she clearly knew all about my bad habits. Fortunately, the flight started off smoothly. As the plane approached its destination, the first officer took control for landing. The aircraft suddenly began shaking violently. Passengers and crew instantly panicked. I had just sobered up and realized this was far more serious than it seemed. The first officer discovered the elevator was jammed. I immediately ordered the chief flight attendant to keep the cabin calm, but in the blink of an eye, the plane pitched downward into a dive. A flight attendant who wasn't buckled in was thrown into the air, but the aircraft kept plunging toward the ground. All 102 people on board were too terrified to breathe. I immediately contacted air traffic control and told the tower to prepare for an emergency landing. At our current rate of descent, the odds of a safe landing were almost zero. Following my instructions, the first officer dumped all the fuel, but the aircraft still wouldn't respond. After receiving clearance from ATC, we even jettisoned the fuel tanks. They smashed into an overhead luggage compartment. A flight attendant rushed over to deal with it, but violent turbulence threw her across the cabin. Looking at the buildings getting closer and closer, a crazy idea suddenly came to mind. I was going to fly the plane upside down. The first officer was stunned. After telling the chief flight attendant to leave a final message for her son, I began adjusting the aircraft's attitude. As the plane slowly rolled over, the passengers and crew barely understood what was happening. With the help of the first officer and flight attendant, I actually managed to fly upside down at 800 meters. The unconscious flight attendant slammed into the ceiling. A child with a loose seatbelt slid out of their seat as well. The other flight attendants saw it happen and immediately rushed to help, because a single jolt could cost the child their life. Although flying inverted stopped the descent for a while, without the fuel tanks, the aircraft had completely lost power. There was no way we could reach the airport. To make matters worse, the engines began failing one after another. I had no choice but to take another risk. I decided to find the nearest place to crash land, but before that, I had to roll the aircraft upright again. The plane finally returned to a normal attitude, but both engines were now completely dead. The aircraft began dropping rapidly. Just as we were about to reach an open field, a church suddenly appeared ahead. I pulled back on the controls with all my strength, but the wing still clipped the church steeple. At that moment, everyone held their breath, and all I could do was watch death draw closer and closer.